Hello and welcome to Business Lessons from the Military. I'm your host, a little bit late getting started this morning here on the West Coast. I'm your host, Kevin Bemmel, and we are here every Tuesday at 11 a.m. Pacific time, 2 p.m. Eastern time, with an hour in for Mountain and Central, to talk about military doctrine, military history, great military leaders, and how we can take those ideas and apply them to our professional lives to gain more success for our businesses, whether it's our own, whether it's a company we work for, whether it's a nonprofit. The venue doesn't matter so much. It's the ideas themselves that really can help propel us forward much more quickly than we might have otherwise. The reason I was late is I was coming off of a call with a shipmate, a Marine Corps veteran who started a company after he got out of the Marine Corps. He sold it. Now he and his wife, they're on to their next venture. And one of the topics we were discussing is how his background in the Marine Corps prepared him for the work that he's currently doing. So a little bit of a, what do you call it? When you, I don't want to say the word that first comes, but anyway, someone who will be a guest on the show, hopefully coming up in the near future, and he'll talk. And hopefully his wife will join him as well. They'll talk about the work that they're doing, and you'll see a real world application to the ideas that we talk about each Tuesday here on the show. So we're going to jump right into things, I hope. Let's see, share screen. Here we go. And there. And okay, so here's our PowerPoint. I mentioned this yesterday because I think it's worth noting. The reason I do a PowerPoint is not because I was in the military where death by PowerPoint is a requirement. It's really because when we hear and see information, we're much more likely to absorb it. And so I'd like to mesh the visual with the audio in order to help us learn as well as possible. So here we go. Here's our, I'm going to sort of buzz through this. I talk about the 3 pillars of attainment every week. So in previous shows, we talked about the conduct of war applied to business. We talked about the ideas of maneuver warfare, orienting on the enemy, philosophy of command, shaping the action. Last week, we talked about decision making. So I invite you to go to our YouTube channel, youtube.com/@thewaytowwow, and you can see previous episodes and bring yourself up to date if you've missed them. So today, we're going to talk about mission tactics. So mission tactics is both a leadership style, but it's also a methodology for being most effective in developing the tactical means to achieve our larger goal. Okay, so in a previous show, I talked about the 3 levels at which activity happens, which is strategic, operational, and tactical. Okay, and if we think of strategic as being the highest level, this is what strategy are we going to apply in order to meet our goal. So let's say our goal is I've used Starbucks before. Let me use some other kind of business. Okay. So excuse me. Let's say that we're have you ever heard of a clothing store called Scotch and Soda? Okay, they're I believe a Dutch-based company, the Netherlands, and they do higher end, not super high end like Gucci and all that, but they do kind of just above the middle end of clothing, both men's and women's, right? And I think I don't know this, so I haven't looked into them, so I'm just speculating because that's more fun. So I think their goal is to be the clothing store for people who want to dress sharply, but just slightly unconventionally, right? So they don't want to, you're not going to go there and find, your blue suit and your rep tie like you would see on Wall Street. Okay. But you're also not going to go there and you're not going to go there and find the sort of preppy look that you're going to find that you see at J. Crew. But you're also not going to see the sort of way out there stuff like you might see at Abercrombie and Fitch. So they're sort of between Abercrombie and Fitch and maybe J. Crew. Okay. The reason I'm talking about them is it's a store that I really like the clothes there. They have just that little bit of a stylishness to them that is pleasing for people who care about that sort of thing. Okay, and I think that's their goal is to fill that niche, if you will, be the clothing provider for people like me who we want to look sharp, but we don't want to look staid. We don't want to look like we're dressing back in the 1930s, right? Okay, so that's their top line goal. And their strategy for doing that is to locate their stores where they think they will find that clientele and to have that kind of merchandise that will attract that particular type of consumer. Okay. So that's the strategic level, right? Operationally, they've got whatever is going on. Now we get down to the tactical level. That's the in-store level. Okay. So having been to Scotch and Soda many times, I've noticed the same thing. Every Scotch and Soda store I walked into, which includes one in Heidelberg, Germany, and includes 2 or 3 here in Los Angeles. That is, when you walk in, the people working in the store, they do not immediately jump on you. Can I help you? Like they're vultures. Like they let you kind of walk around, acclimate yourself to the store. They're going on with whatever it is they're doing. And when you get to where they are, they say, hi, hello. If you need anything, please let me know. It's like, it's so nice, right? It's you don't feel pressured. Tactically, I think that's the right approach for the clientele that they're dealing with. They don't need to be hard sell. If someone's walked into their store, they're going to look at the merchandise and either say, this is for me or this is not. They don't have to sell people on their merchandise because they're looking to cater to a particular clientele, right? And then, if you ask them questions, they're very friendly. I got to know several of the people working in the one store that was nearby to where I am frequently. They got to know my name, all that kind of stuff, right? Those are the mission tactics that support their strategic vision, that supports their goal, what it is they're looking to achieve. They created a relationship with me. They got to know more specifically what I liked. And they made it a pleasant place for me to come. And sometimes I would drop by into the shop just to say hello to the folks that worked there. And I wasn't intending to buy anything, and that was fine with them. Walked in, hey, how you doing? How are things going? How's business been? And they tell me, okay, hey, I got to run, but I'll see you next time. They're like, great, see you later, kind of thing, right? So that's the idea in business of mission tactics. Now, the Marine Corps, which is where the conduct of war applied to business, we're talking about Marine Corps doctrine. The Marine Corps doctrine in this is you assign the mission, okay? So in the case of Scotch and Soda, your mission is to sell clothes to people who like the kind of garments that we're selling. That's the mission, okay? Now, they may give them some ideas on how to do it, like how the general approach they want people to take. But they couldn't possibly specify things like, okay, here's how we want you to create a relationship with Kevin. Right? They may specify, by the way, as part of the mission, create a relationship with customers. But how that's done is left to the individual. And that is smart because the individuals are the ones interacting with the customers. And so they are in the best place to know, how do I create these relationships? And by the way they create a relationship with me is probably different than the way they create a relationship with somebody else. So I can go in there and I can talk to them about, Alan Flusser and Bruce Failer. These are men who are well known in the men's clothing world. They've written numerous books, et cetera, et cetera. I can talk to them about other stores and styles and all this kind of stuff. So the kind of conversation we're going to have is going to be different than a guy who walks in there who he doesn't know a whole lot about clothing. He wants to look sharp. He knows that. But he doesn't really know much more than that. So they're going to have a different kind of relationship with that fellow. And so their ability to be versatile and interact with a range of customers with a range of interests is really important. And the reason I picked out Scotch and Soda is what I found is they were I guess whoever manages the stores, they're very good at finding people who do that. And they're quite good at retaining them, because I used to see the same people over and over and over again over a period of years, which is kind of unusual in the retail business. Okay, so this is an example of how you assign a mission, okay, but you don't specify the tactics. You don't specify how the mission will be achieved. Okay, what you do is you give your people, now in the Marine Corps, what they do is they train a lot. Okay, so in training, they will give a squad of Marines or a platoon of Marines or a company of Marines, whatever the size of the group is, they will give them their objective. Okay, and then they will count on the training that those Marines have received. They'll count on them to use that to figure out, okay, how am I going to achieve this objective? And then afterwards, after the training, they'll do an evaluation and say, okay, how did it work? What went right? What went wrong? What could have been done better? Okay, and then they'll send them out into training again, and they'll do another exercise, and they'll give them an opportunity to take the knowledge they've gained to improve on the tactics that they use. Okay, but they don't define the tactics. Okay, that's inefficient. Okay, because in fact, I was just talking. If you've been watching the show, you've heard my favorite expression by von Moltke, right? No plan survives first contact with the enemy, right? It just doesn't. So you have to have a plan, because you have to have a sense of knowing what you're going to do. But once you start getting into the thick of it, you're inevitably going to have to make alterations. And if you've got to, contact, higher echelons to clear your alterations, you can't move nimbly. You can't take advantage of opportunities that are in front of you. And in short, you impair your own ability to be successful, and your commanders are impairing your ability to be successful by micromanaging you. Okay, so what we want to do is give our people a lot of opportunity to learn and even make mistakes. Okay, we'll learn more from making mistakes than we will from getting it right, because just because we got it right in this instance doesn't mean that we're going to get it right in the next instance. It may work because the particular situation is what it is, and so these tactics work for that. But then if we're faced with a different situation, we've got to have the ability to pivot our tactics, to alter our tactics in a way that will still allow us to achieve our objectives. So I was in I don't remember if I mentioned this last week. I was in a business training. I'm not going to say who the organization was because I don't want to cast aspersions on them. I think they were doing very good work. So it was a training for people who hadn't been involved in entrepreneurship before, or at least very much. And the person running the training started out by saying, why do you think most businesses fail? Okay. And the answer she got most frequently was the businesses were trying to sell something that people didn't want. While that's probably true, it's not very often that a business is able to figure out in advance what people really want. Okay, you can do all kinds of market research, you can do focus groups, you can do surveys, and yet when you launch a product or a service for that matter, you're not really going to know if it's what people want. The successful businesses are the ones who can pivot. And the reason most businesses fail is not necessarily because they've launched a product or service that people don't want. It's because they're not flexible enough to get the market feedback that allows them to make the changes in tactics, operations, or strategy that will take them down the path to success, which is never straight. It's always like I've been doing with my hands. It always weaves, right? And it's just like fighting a battle, okay? While an army may generally be going in this direction, like if you think about the battlefronts in World War II, for example, okay, you had Montgomery's army group coming kind of from the north, and then you had Bradley's army group coming from a more central southern route as they converged on Germany, right? Well, okay, so those two directions, they weren't going to change. But within those broad movements were armies, corps, divisions, regiments, battalions, companies, most of which were not moving in a linear direction. They were having to figure out the path through. And the smaller the unit, the more deviations they were probably having to take to get to their eventual objective, which was ostensibly Berlin, right? Capture the capital, and Germany is conquered. Okay, Nazi Germany was conquered. So when we talk about mission tactics, since it's at the tactical level that we're most likely going to have to make detours and contingency plans and figure out a new path to get there, we want to give the people, especially the leadership at that level, the maximum of flexibility that they can have. Okay, so that's where this idea of mission tactics comes in. Assign the mission. Okay, we want you to do X. Okay, we're going to train you with as much training as we can, and then you're going to figure out how to get where it is that you want to go. And my watch is going crazy. Okay, I started a little bit late, but I'm going to do my best to end on time. Okay, so by the way, I haven't shown this for a while. I'm going to go ahead and close out of the screen share so you can see this. So this is the Marine Corps warfighting doctrine. This is book 1, okay? And this is where all of this comes from. So you can find this online, by the way, okay? I just want to take a minute, and you can see I've highlighted various things in here. So I want to take a minute to just read you a couple of sentences that I think really get to the heart of it, okay? Assigning a subordinate mission without specifying how the mission must be accomplished. That's the core idea that I've been talking about here. Okay, here's the key thing, and this is where it gets difficult, especially if you're in a more senior leadership role, right? The senior intervenes in a subordinate's execution only by exception. Okay, so it's a rare situation where you're going to intervene. Okay, let me get to okay. All right, so that is the idea behind mission tactics, and you can see this in a number of organizations. So for example, so I've a very close friend who's involved with eXp Realty. It's the fastest growing real estate company in the United States. And he's shown me a lot about how eXp Realty works. What's interesting is the top line objective is to serve customers' real estate needs as well as possible. That's the mission of eXp Realty, okay? And they have enormous amounts of training. They have online training. They have face-to-face training. They have video training. They have affinity groups, all kinds of opportunities to get trained, okay, and to practice things, okay? The tactics that an individual agent uses to meet that objective are largely within that agent's control. So as long as they're not illegal or immoral, it's up to the agent to figure out tactically how they're going to achieve the objectives that are necessary to support the company's overall goals. And I think this is one of the reasons, by the way, that eXp has been so successful, because what they focus on is training their people on how to figure out for themselves the tactics they need to execute in order to meet the company's top line goal. Okay. And that's what we want to do as business owners. That's what we want to do as people working in other people's businesses. It's what we want to do in nonprofits. I would say it's what we want to do in academia and government as well, right? We don't want to micromanage. We want to see that our people get excellent training that then they can use creatively in order to achieve the goals of the organization. All right, so that's what I've got for you today. A little bit shorter than normal. That's okay. It was a short topic with really just that one single point to make. Tomorrow, my show, People Making Money, begins at 12:30 p.m. Pacific time. I'm going to be talking about how you quickly analyze an investment property using a technique that I learned from several decades ago from a fantastic teacher by the name of William Golden. I've since modified it a little bit. Well, not a little bit, actually, quite a bit. And it's just, I think you will find it a great tool to have in your toolbox if you're going to be doing anything with real estate. The fact of the matter is it would work for also analyzing an investment in a business, although businesses typically aren't broken down the same way that real estate is. So there'd have to be some different terminology and that kind of stuff that you would have to use. But I invite you to join me tomorrow at 12:30 p.m. And then next week, we're back to the beginning of the Way to Wow shows. On Monday at 10 a.m. Pacific time is Trust and Estates Weekly. And Tuesday, we'll be back again for the next edition of Business Lessons from the Military at 11 a.m. Pacific time. So I thank you very much for joining me. If you have questions, comments, please feel free to send me an email or to drop a comment into any of our social media outlets. They'll all be in the show notes after we end this meeting, and it posts on YouTube. They'll all be there for you. And I mentioned a couple of times anyway, my YouTube channel. I would have sure appreciate if you would consider subscribing to my YouTube channel. You'll be sure to get notified anytime a new show posts, and so you'll never miss an episode. And I would love to have you as a subscriber. And that wraps it up, only to wish you a wonderful rest of the day and to give my sign off. Marie, darling, you are my bell. Thanks so much. Look forward to seeing you tomorrow.